Well, this afternoon, Maxam, the company responsible for the transfer of explosives that detonated at Appiatse in the western region, has accepted fines imposed by government but denies any wrongdoing. Maxam was fined $1 million and another $5 million in other damages. This afternoon, we have the experts to analyze the fallout from the Appiatse investigations, plus an update on how the community is coping weeks after the disaster. Joining us now is safety expert Nanaya Akwada, who's with the Bureau of Public Safety, and we can also speak to him on the fine that government is imposing on this company. We also have Dr. Tony Obin, who is a former managing director of the commission in charge of minerals. But before we interact with both of them, there's a need for us to tell you about what the latest is in the Appiatse community. My colleague Israel Lai has been talking to some of the residents days after the blast. But first of all, let's bring you the statement which is coming through from the Natural Resources Ministry, imposing and announcing that decision to impose the fine on Maxam company. You have that on your screens shortly, explaining why government is deciding to take this decision. But shortly after, we know that Maxam has also issued a statement indicating their position on the matter. Meanwhile, Robert Jemfi of FGR Bogosu Prestia Limited was one of the first people who got to the scene after the explosion at Appiatse. In this interview with Israel Lai, he talked about the interaction with the police escort who was part of the team transporting the explosives and the chaos at the scene when they arrived.
The explosion that claimed a number of lives, we're back at the scene and exactly to where you can call ground zero to see what has happened since. As you can see on the road, the crater, or where the crater was left, has been filled, and what we have in its place is that the road has been redone. So we've seen the first laying of bitumen, or first layer of bitumen, which will subsequently be run over again, so then we get a better layer and a smoother one that the vehicles can ride over. But when this happened, one of the first responders to get to the scene was FGR Bogosu Prestia Limited, a mining firm, and I have one of the men who first got to the scene to speak with us, to tell us exactly what happened. So, please tell us, how did you get to hear of the blast?
Yeah, thank you. On 20th of January, I received a call from one of our stakeholder radio stations, Best FM. And the person who called, his dial question. But we call him Big Flash. So he called. He was calling and calling. It was around getting towards midday. So when I picked, because I was in the middle of a meeting, he said, "So Jemfi, we need the help of the company because there is a vehicle burning in the middle of the road at Appiatse. No one can come and no one can go." That was all. I wanted better clarification, but he said that is the information he has and it has traveled to his station. So we should do whatever we can do. So immediately I called our safety and well-being manager and told him that he should deploy our fire tender and also the rescue team. So a third team member, a rescue emergency response team, and our fire tender with its crew were dispatched here. And then we also brought a rescue van should there be any need for saving lives. So we arrived here at the call of emergency call from Best FM. When the emergency team arrived here, what they saw, the blast had already gone. So what they saw was screaming all over, and people were crying and crying for people to save them under debris. Limbs were chopped off and all that, so they quickly had to start.
So at the time that you were called to come in, what you knew was that there was a fire.
There was a
but by the time
on fire in the middle of the road, and the two-way traffic has ceased. And this is a very busy road, so I understood what it could mean, but not with. So what we did was to deploy, based on that, deploy enough. Because if a vehicle is on fire, has there been a collision? Has there been what? Because we couldn't get all the details.
Right.
So based on our understanding, we said, okay, let's deploy all. Our fire tender, our rescue team, and our
But so
rescue
between
bus.
the time you mobilized to get to the scene, the explosion had happened.
That happened.
So you came in, you saw the people lying around,
Was
people crying.
Confusion, yeah. But we saw limbs chopped off and all that. So, and people were crying under debris in the community. The actual nucleus of Appiatse.
And by the way, this is the actual nucleus of Appiatse, which has now been leveled because they're clearing is essentially the ground so that they can rebuild the community as we have it. So yes, where exactly was the epicenter?
The epicenter was just where I'm walking towards. More in here, but had generated enough debris.
What do you understand to have caused the accident, or to have caused the incident for the explosion to follow?
There are several narratives, but listening to it, it's and trying to piece it together. There was a case of a tricycle, commercialized tricycle that they call Krea. And it also involved a real motorbike, the normal that we knew before the advent of Aboboya Empire. And then the explosive carrying vehicle. The explosive carrying vehicle was going this direction. And according to the narrations, all the motorbikes were going in this direction, going to Bogos, but the explosive truck was going towards Oseko. Okay, now this is the narration. The tricycle was coming out of the side road, leading out of Appiatse. There's a side road that joins at an acute angle. And according to the narration, it's at that point that the way and manner that side, that Pragra entered the road, he suffered, some they believe that he suffered a careless drive from, the motorbike suffered a careless drive from the Pragra that was joining the main street. That is not confirmed. That this is the narration. We're not here. And in order not to collide into it, the motorbike rider trying to save the situation, but with a speed that was not easy to control, fell while they were still in motion. And I think the narration suggests that they lost hold, the rider lost hold of the bike. So the bike was sliding with the speed with which it was coming and sparking fire. And according to the narrations, the two riders on that motorbike fell in a manner that the approaching explosive vehicle could have run over them. So in trying to avoid them, went a bit towards the right-hand side. And in the process, the bike that was in the sliding mode ran under it with sparks of fire. That is the narration. It's not confirmed. And it's difficult to confirm until investigations tie them all up together. But that is the story.
Right. So subsequently, we're learning that it actually dragged the motorbike for a while.
Yes, because the vehicle was already in motion, remember? And the various narration is that the driver of that explosive truck tried to aim to go out of the population area.
All right.
And all these are all, I would say, speculative, but that's the story. That when he got to port, where eventually the explosion happened, they suspect that he might have realized that the fueling station would have made the worst case of the very risk he was aiming to.
Okay, so we see a dual filling station out there. So
these are the narrations.
He was essentially trying to move out of
initially they said if you look at
the midst of the population.
But then they
when he noticed
because he saw that no, the danger ahead was worse if he goes further.
Was
so
worse.
He got out and then tried to use. So he got out and then tried to use. The fire extinguisher and all that. At some point, they observed that after he tried and he could not control the situation, he started warning people to run, and then he started going to the community. Everybody should run. But at some point, he himself realized that he was not getting people to cooperate, so he himself ran further away. So no wonder he did not die.
There's talk of whether the vehicle carrying the explosives had an escort, and there's talk of whether the escort was ahead of it, or the police escort was on board the vehicle. What do you know?
As far as I know, like I said, I was not here on the incident, but when we came in response to the call for help, and then the information we got from our first advance team, the rescue team, that it's a terrible incident and lots of lives have been lost and all that, I came in. When I came, unfortunately, I did not take a picture, but a police officer was shown to me and my colleagues that this police officer was the escort on board. I even thanked God for his life, and I'm telling him that if he doesn't know God, this should be enough for him to look for God. Even though I cautioned him that it's not to say those who died or got injured don't have God, but he should make it a point. So, but I wanted to take a picture with him, but that day if you were here, the demand on FGR and the other government agencies that later joined our team was too much. So I got distracted. But the investigation team should establish, but this is what I know.
Right. Now, we also know of the level of destruction of the explosion. You at FGR, as a miner, you were aware of explosives and the impact of explosives. Can you tell us a bit about how all this played out, and for us to appreciate the impact of the explosion?
When it comes to explosives, the 10 that they were carrying, we normally don't use that much. We order our explosives, we keep them and use them in smaller quantities. So the established or the narratives that we've received concerning this incident, that there was as much as 10 kilos of explosive for it all to go off in a particular area. Ammonia, sorry.
So what you have there is another account on the APIATSE explosion, but it's now time for us to have a conversation on this. Joining us now is Dr. Tony Obing, who is the former CEO of the Ghana Minerals Commission, and also Nana Yao Akwada, who is a safety expert with the Bureau of Public Safety. But first off, we want to put on your screens now a breakdown of the announcement that we're receiving from the Land Ministry on the fine imposed on Maxam. So here you have it, $6 million in all. That's the total amount of the fine, but there's a breakdown. The first $1 million will be imposed immediately, which means that Maxam would have to cough up that amount of money immediately. The other $5 million remaining is for other damages that occurred at the scene, where we just brought you some recent accounts as well. So that's the breakdown for you. The first $1 million for regulatory breaches, which is being imposed on Maxam, and then the other $5 million components will be spread over an 18-month period, but it's also for other damages that we're seeing at the scene right now. But let's bring in our experts now to understand what's happening and the latest directives that we are hearing of. But we also do know that Maxam as well has been reacting to the directives from the Lands Ministry. There's also a need for us to get more details of the conditions that the Lands Ministry is now giving to Maxam as the conditions precedent for which it will allow Maxam to have that permit again to carry, develop or supply explosives. Remember, this company that is at the center of all these controversy has been a company that has been supplying and manufacturing explosives. So government is directing that as condition precedent, all trucks used by the company in carting the explosives shall have a red flashing light, clearly visible at least 100 meters away. And then they would need a siren, they would need some automatic operating bells, and they would also need a fire suppression system alongside the fire extinguishers that they would require on the track. These are the conditions that government is also giving. I want to take you to point 8, which is very critical because there were concerns about whether or not there was an escort. Government is giving another condition precedent to Maxam to ensure that they have escorts at all times. So you have this an extension of point 4, and you have point 4D there, indicating that they also need to install a tracking system to monitor the speed and movement of the explosive track, the set track that is controlling the explosives. And then it goes on and on, talks about the need for some monitors on the explosives itself. But let's move you to some of the condition precedents that government is also giving this afternoon to Maxam before it brings back its permit. At point 5, it is indicating that before each explosive track takes off from the operational sites of the company, the waybill for the transportation shall be endorsed by an inspector of mines. Mind you, that is in line with the regulation 15.2 of the LI 2177, which regulates mining activities and also explosives here in Ghana. So that is being stressed at point 5, which is contained in the statement that has been released by the Sector Minister Samuel Abu-Jinapor a couple of hours ago. Also at point 6, and mind you, these are all conditions precedent. It means that if Maxam cannot comply to all of these directives, then Maxam will not be allowed to continue to manufacture, supply explosives as they used to. So at point 6, you have one of the conditions that they're giving to Maxam now. Maxam would have all tracks transporting explosives. They must be accompanied by escort vehicles, which shall be inspected by an inspector of mines, and the detailed records of that inspector also captured in the book. So these are the conditions that government is giving to Maxam to fulfill before it gives the license operating permit back to Maxam. Maxam, remember, is that company that manufactures and supplies explosives to a lot of the mining companies. Let's get the reaction of Nana Akwada, who's on with us via Zoom. Nana, so I'm sure that by now you've heard the directives coming through from the Sector Minister, the Honorable Samuel Abu-Jinapor, indicating why, first of all, government is taking this decision. He says it's based on 2 reports, first from the regulator, the Minerals Commission itself, and then the 3-member committee that was set up. After a careful assessment of the report, they are imposing this cumulative fine of $6 million. Is that too much for Maxam to take at this point? Nana, it appears that we're having difficulties hearing you. If you could just unmute for it so we can get the point you're making. But yes, right, that's better.
Thank you. Let me first of all say good afternoon to your viewers. I think that to a large extent, $6 million is no sum that would tackle a mining company. But considering our circumstances and the circumstances of the village that was at the receiving end of this disaster, it might go a long way to resettle the people and to possibly, if distribution is done or administration of this money is done effectively, it will put a lot of people in that village on their feet or back to their livelihood. So $6 million for us, we cannot determine whether it's fair or appropriate, but to the extent that it will be able to resettle the community, we'll be fine with it.
With regard to issues surrounding public safety, the first view, first of all, and give me your reactions if I'm wrong, the first view from you experts is that there should be clarity and transparency on the part of government into the accounts and the findings that were made by the committee that was set up to look into the case. What's your reaction to that, knowing that the minister is only communicating at this point the punitive measures and not necessarily making public the details of the two reports he's received?
I think that's a minus for the ministry. It's a very huge minus because when such incidents occur, the public generally is not only interested in the punitive measures that you'll be applying to people or actors in the game, but also they want to find out whether as a country we've been able to get to the bottom, the root cause of the incident. It is our only assurance that the incident will not recur, to the extent that even Maxam itself has come out to say that they are not privy to the findings against them, and that they are even contesting that breaches that have been identified in the investigation so far, they do not see a linkage between the incident and the breaches, means that the investigation probably has not been thorough enough. And the fact that we are going ahead to set up another committee to review a legislation that may not or have not been, we have not identified whether that legislation is adequate enough to run the industry after many years that it has been passed. I think that something is gone wrong somewhere, and it will be very important that the ministry, the minister, Honorable Dinapo, reconsiders, relooks at some of the steps that he's taking in this regard.
I'm glad that you're talking about the embattled company itself, Maxam. They've released a statement just after the announcement by the Lands Ministry indicating their concerns and what it is that they have to say about the imposition of the fine. We don't have all of the time to read the entire statement, but the summary of the concerns they are raising is that it appears that there was a subcontractor involved in all of this, which they refer to as the ones transporting this very explosive. And they refer to that company in the statement, which you have on your screens now, indicating that there was a third party that was involved in the transportation of the explosive itself, which is the Agatham Limited, which they refer to as the logistics provider. So it appears that there's a third party involved in all of this. Maxam says we'll go ahead and comply with the directives, except to say that we need to give a true account of what's happening. Is that questioning any further how thorough this investigative process have been?
Well, absolutely. Reading the language of the presser by Maxam, that's exactly what they've done. They've said that, hey, we have not violated any of your provisions. We have not breached any of the legislation. But in order for our business to continue, we will pay whatever fine you slap at us. So it is up to the ministry now to, tell the Ghanaian people where those breaches occur, who breached what. And then once we are satisfied that we know what breaches or what sort of non-compliance led to this incident, we are tackling the issue. Otherwise, we'll go to bed. Maxam could pay $10 million, $20 million today, and the next day it will be another community. So it is absolutely important that the ministry, with oversight responsibilities over the Minerals Commission, get the investigating body to get to the bottom of the breaches that actually led to this incident.
But Nana, is this, and I'm sorry to come in at this point, is this a favorable time for us to release the report, particularly when we know that there are two streams of investigations that are being carried out right now, one by the sector ministry, and then we also have the Ghana Police Service carrying out its investigations. There are concerns about prejudice and also putting out some information that may disturb or affect the quality of investigations that the Ghana Police Service is carrying out. So when is it appropriate, in your view, in your estimation, that we make all of these findings public?
Well, as far as we have similar companies, doing the same job, transporting explosives, it's absolutely important that the two institutions either team up to conduct this investigation, or whoever finishes his report puts it out so that industry players will learn, civil society will learn, and then we will get this thing not to recur. But if they have decided that the police, after many, many days, I'm surprised why the police report is not even out. I did not know the police were also doing their own investigation, because normally when such incidents occur, the process through which they go to establish acts of terrorism or acts of criminality is a very quick process. But many days on, we are told the police is investigating. That's fine. But if the Minerals Commission are done with their investigation report, if the other committee that was also set up by the ministry, the 3-member committee, if they are also done with their report, the public needs to know so that we can name the perpetrator, we can point to the violations, and then we would expect that moving on, the ministry can now see to it that it is addressed. The areas that led to the incident occurring are adequately addressed. Because I, for one, I can't sleep if I know that people are moving ammonium nitrate in this country and they are not under any supervision. I cannot sleep if I know that people are moving high capacity explosives in this country and there are portions of regulations that they are literally, violating and nobody is saying anything. I cannot sleep if I know that our law that has been promulgated to govern the movement of high capacity explosives and such substances is lacking certain provisions, which is leading to such incidents. So that is why we have said that whatever report that the ministry have taken receipt of, they should make it public.
Nana, there are concerns now about public safety, even within the Appiatse community itself. We'll talk about that shortly. But from all that you're saying now, what's your suspicion, really, that government cannot be trusted?
No, those are your words. But trust me, I have never been confident in the way government deals with such incidents, such occurrences which bring so much misery, sometimes bringing the whole nation to a standstill on its feet, on its knees, how they've dealt with the report. There is no
bicycle crossed the vehicle
available at the expense of the taxpayer. 2 reports are available at the expense of the taxpayer for someone to think that he is wiser than all and that there are details in there that we, the public, the taxpayer, does not deserve to know. So they'll keep it to themselves and give us, aspects that they think it's okay for us to consume. In the first place, as we sit here today, none of us know what actually led to the accident. And the company that all of us were looking up to, that they violated aspects of the Ghanaian law, which led to the perishing of 13 lives and a whole community breaks down. The company says that, hey, we did not do anything that breached any of your law. And that we are paying this money because the big boys says we have to pay, otherwise we cannot work. We need to know what caused this accident. We need to know who did not do his work. We need to know who did his job and did it badly. That led to the 13 lives getting lost. I think that, yes, there may be 2 reports out there and a third one coming, but they have not answered the critical questions that they need to answer to the Ghanaian people. Now,
let's not lose sight over the fact that this borders on the safety of the public as well, particularly those within the Appiatse community. Government has announced its plan of how it intends to deal with this matter. There's a committee that has just been set up for the purposes of reconstructing the facilities there within the community. I'm sure that you've been doing your independent checks. Is this the right time and the right spot for us to reconstruct and resettle these people? You're taking them out of their space for some time, reconstructing at the same location and bringing them back to where they used to live. Is that the best approach, having in mind all of the checks that you've done at the Bureau of Public Safety?
Now, my brother, when disasters strike, you must be swift at resettling the people. And I believe if you and I were community members or residents of Appiatse, we would want to be settled yesterday. And so the time to resettle these people and get them back on their lives was many, many days ago. I think it should be done and should be done quickly. The most important aspect, however, is that if I live in Appiatse, I want to be sure that when even government builds a house for me to go sleep in, I'm certain that what led to that incident occurring, government has taken full grip of it and control of it.
I'm grateful. Nanaya Awakwada is a safety expert with the Bureau of Public Safety, sharing his thoughts with us here.